Yeah, and I just wanted to extrapolate from there and talk about Prop 22. Obviously, we talked about in a previous piece for the Vanguard after Uber acquired Postmates as kind of a show of strength and a consolidation in order to, kind of push this legislation through at a time when, there was a lot of actual frustration even at the state level with these companies because as you mentioned when we spoke, these are companies that should be paying into things like unemployment benefits and things that taxes that should be going to the state so that they can take care of people when disasters like this one strike. However, when Prop 22 was presented, it was presented pretty narrowly as a like, oh, this is going to be affecting Uber drivers. This is going to be
Right.
affecting Lyft drivers. And obviously that was largely because of the $200 million that was used in, essentially peddling propaganda by these massive tech firms. Could you talk about how now that, these workers obviously no longer have to be classified as workers, that this will affect not just Uber drivers, but everyone else and kind of what ramifications we have to deal with now that Prop 22 passed?
Yeah, it's as I've said before, the most dangerous law that I've seen in my own lifetime, most dangerous labor law that I've seen in my lifetime. And I still feel, sick to my stomach that it passed. And before I even go into Prop 22, I just want to say to those who are watching or listening that the system of employment rights that we have in the U.S. are so limited. They are really limited. For many, many years, we've been fighting to raise the federal minimum wage. We've been fighting for something better than overtime compensation, something better than unemployment insurance, which is so hard to get. We have such a limited array of regime of employment rights in this country, and that we're having to defend those limited rights is particularly gut wrenching. And in California, what Prop 22 does is take away all of the rights that workers have, these very limited rights that workers have, and that too, taking them away from the most low wage people of color workforce, so the most vulnerable and marginal workforce, taking them away and calling them something that they're not, which is an independent contractor. So independent contractors, independent small business person typically, sets their own prices. They decide when and where to work. They are able to sort of advertise and quote unquote hustle to make a living. And Uber and Lyft drivers, Instacart workers, DoorDash workers, Postmates workers, these people cannot do any of that. Their prices are set by the companies. They are told when and where to go to make a living, and those people are no longer paid, are not required to be paid by the time that they work. So now you can legally do work in California and for these companies and actually go home in debt, and you are that's on you. The interesting thing, as you alluded to in your question, is that this does not just apply to Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and Instacart workers. For the first time ever, there is two new categories of workers in California: transportation network company workers and delivery network company workers. And these laws were written such that new companies and old companies, in logistics in particular, can now be formulated to fit this definition, and those people no longer have to pay their workers a living wage. So, for example, if you are a warehouse worker and they make it so that you are doing any part of delivery or any aspect of delivery, you are a delivery network worker that can be dispatched by an app and no longer get the minimum wage, no longer get workers' compensation, and what is considered one of the most dangerous jobs in America. So if you're injured, you and your family are, shit out of luck. This really will give Amazon the opportunity, and I haven't heard anyone talk about this, but give Amazon the opportunity to really establish a monopoly hold in logistics, where they already have a growing share of the market. One of the Teamsters have long represented UPS drivers, and FedEx has been the big the big competitor for them, and FedEx is, this terrible company that has long been in litigation against their own drivers, who they claim are franchisees. And what this legislation does is it kind of makes all of that go away. I mean, you can now just say that you have a delivery network driver, dispatch your workers by app instead of having to have a payroll. And there you go. The workers are then bearing all of the risk and liability of business. It's so scary and so dangerous, and it's going to spread, because what happens in California tends to spread all over the world. Uber and Lyft started in California, and within months, I remember in 2000, I think it was 2014, when I was talking in a conference in San Francisco called the Sharing Conference. I don't know why they invited me, but I was critical of the companies, and I thought people were going to throw things at me. Like, there was such palpable anger in the room as I critiqued this business model, and it spread very quickly, and no one wanted to hear any kind of criticism of what was going to happen, and what eventually did happen. And I'm worried that this is going to spread. They're already working on federal legislation, and now that is similar to what they got in California. They're starting the same campaign in New York. I believe they're also doing it in Illinois, and these are just the places where we know it's happening. And they have a blueprint for how to do it. You pour $200 million into an election. You lie about what people who are voting on the law, or to the legislator, and you engage in a massive misinformation advertising campaign, and you harass your critics, and you get what you want. And that's American lawmaking. So it's quite frightening. Really, it keeps me up at night.